minutes past the hour. We thank you so much for staying with the Daily Report right here on TV 47. Time now for our conversation on the segment Power and Politics. And my guest tonight, as I did tell you earlier on, he is a member of Parliament for Gatundu South constituency, Mheshimiwa Gigi. That is Gabriel Kagombe. I got that right?
Well, it's Gigi Kagombe.
Gigi Kagombe.
That's my formal name.
Oh,
I don't know why everybody feels the need to call me my former name.
Your former name?
I was formerly known as that name, but I'm now Gigi Kagombe.
Gigi Kagombe.
Yeah.
Fine. Mheshimiwa Gigi, welcome to our studios.
Thank you very much.
And to this segment, of course, to discuss
Thank you, George.
The tea reforms and what you have for your in-tray as members of Parliament beginning tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
By the way, how was your recess? Because now you're resuming tomorrow. What have you been up to?
It was such a challenging recess because there's been a lot of things, you know, immediately after elections, then we have a lot of changes happening and people, the expectations of the public are always during elections at the highest point. They're always at the top. And therefore, after elections, people have very high expectations. And therefore, that was our first actual recess. And when you go to the constituency and you're talking to people, then we have a lot of issues. And we had a challenge because we we had lit disbursements of CDF, which helps our people with the bursaries and such issues. And therefore, it was a challenging recess. But all in all, we thank God that we're here and that Kenyans have been brave enough to have braced the hard economic times that we have had and that we are still experiencing. But we look forward to better times in the future. And actually, I think beginning this year has begun on a high note. We have hopes, huge, high hopes in the trajectory that the economy is taking. The dollar is now stabilizing, although at a very high, it's stabilizing, but very high, but stabilizing. You know, you're better off with a stabilized dollar than a very fluid one.
But it's at an all-time high. Even
it's an all-time high, but it's stabilized. You know, what business people want is, of course, a high rate of dollar is not good. But when it's high and unpredictable, is worse than when it is high and stable. But we look forward to, you know, we also have people who are exporters. And for us, the exporters, because we are here to talk about tea, we are very happy that the dollar is high. And we are selling our tea at, we are being paid in dollars, and we feel good that the dollar has gone high because, you know, and that is one side. As a director, as a tea farmer, we are not complaining. I
actually want to...
On the other side now, as a member of parliament, now taking care of everything else, then now that's not very good. But you see, if this country had more of exporters than importers, then the dollar being very strong against the shilling, it would have favored us. But the problem is that the dollar is very high or very strong against the Kenya shilling, and we are a net importer. For me, because we say that when you get lemons, please make lemonade. And I think that it is a high time for people to think of how to be exporting and not to be importing. The way the dollar has moved has favored the exporters. We, the tea exporters, are favored by the dollar. By the strength of the dollar. If this was a net exporter, then we will not be complaining.
Let's listen to Mheshimiwa, the Deputy President, regarding the same sentiments, what he said in Murang'a just, you know, just about 2 days ago, regarding this benefit that tea farmers like yourself will be reaping big.
It is true, tumeweka reforms, last time tumepata bonus nzuri. But I agree with what Wakili Edward Mureu amesema. Ya kwamba the dollar is high. So, hii mambo ya dola kuwa juu should be represented, it should transform into some gain. Sindio? So, I'm going to call a meeting of KTDA on Tuesday morning at 8:30. We sit down, we look at the numbers. What is the rate ya dola? Calculator iko nitanulia mawe mpya. Ndio isifanye makosa, si ndio? we are going to align it. Mutaniwachia hiyo maneno? Munaniamini mimi? We will align it. There is no way we can have a fixed rate. We have a free economy. We'll be paid at the existing rate of the dollar on that particular day. That will happen.
Indeed, that was Deputy President over the weekend speaking in, I believe, Murang'a County. Mheshimiwa Gigi, when you listen to the sentiments you're talking about, being paid at the interest, rather the current rate of the dollar to farmers, how much of reforms have gone into ensuring that farmers can actually reap big? You're also a chairman
I'm a director.
A director at BETA and
those are good prayers. Maybe I'll be a chairman. Maybe, those are good prayers.
Yes.
I want to say this. Actually, what the Deputy President has said, I said it in December.
Yes.
And I said that it cannot be that when the shilling is weak, when the shilling is strong against the dollar, farmers or tea farmers can suffer. And when it is strong, when the dollar is strong against the Kenya shillings, then the Kenyan farmer continues suffering. And we said, I actually called during our end of year conference with all directors in Westlands. I said that we must get the real value for our dollars as tea farmers. In fact, I went ahead to suggest and actually push that farmers be paid in dollars. We are not fighting to dollarize the economy, but we're saying let farmers at tea factories be paid in dollars, and then they change their dollar at their local level at the time that they want. Because I give an example. I said that during, you know how tea proceeds, or how the tea business moves, is we start selling tea in July.
Yes.
And that tea that we sell in July will only be paid, the bonus will be paid in October or the following year. So this year, the tea that we sold in July of last year, we sold it when the dollar was at 137. So when you have exchanged the dollar at that time, and now when you're talking now when you're going to pay the farmer, the dollar is at 160, then you have lost so much money. You have lost 23 shillings.
Shillings, yes.
For the farmer.
For the farmer.
Because you exchanged the dollar at that time. If you had kept that money in dollar, then the farmer would have exchanged that dollar at 160 now, and would have paid the farmer a lot higher for the dollar that they earned at that time. So that decision must and should and must be left to the directors of a factory, individual factories, to make when to get into the exchange, when to exchange their dollars for the Kenya shillings, and when to pay their farmers.
Okay.
So that has been an issue that we have been discussing, and that's why you hear the president discussing it, the deputy president discussing it, because we raised it, and I raised it as an issue of concern, that we sell, KTDA sells tea for the farmer on behalf, and I said, when the tea is in the farm, it belongs to the farmer. When the tea is in the factory, it belongs to the farmer. When the tea is at the auction, it belongs to the farmer. And when the tea is sold, that dollar that has emanated from that belongs to the farmer for her or him to decide what to do with it when she wants to do with it.
Are people still plucking out the tea bushes from their farms?
No. I think that there was a phase some 5 years ago, and I think that was nipped in the bud by the regime change. And when we brought the tea reforms, what we discussed most and what we did most was to change how the tea business was conducted. The problem there before was that we had a very complacent regime in the tea sector that did not feel the need to get newer prices, newer markets, and they were just complacent with the old prices, old market. But when we came in 2021, we changed a lot of things. We stirred the waters. We muddied the waters, and they said, we want reforms. We first started by putting a price floor for our tea. that we shall come to discuss the effects of later in this show, at this show.
Yes.
And what we did is to make sure that we are now exploring new markets, new ways of selling tea, because the traditional and conventional tea consumer has changed. The person who makes decision at a domestic level in your house is now newer. Your mother does not make decisions the same way your wife would make decisions. The generation is changing. And therefore, we needed a new way of approaching the market. And what we did is to get new routes to market. We got new routes to market. Because I keep saying that we have people now, if you look, let's take an example of Nairobi and this country. You find we have now new consumers of whiskey than we had 20 years ago. You know, you don't want us to talk about alcohol, but for me, it's a beverage, just like tea and coffee. Those are competitors because we sell beverage. And when we sell beverage, we look at all beverages that are consumed. And therefore, we must be real about who our competitors are. And we are losing our young people who should have been taking tea. They're now running to whiskey and other things. And we ask ourselves, how do we get to that table? Because that is the same pocket that we're fighting for. And we say, tea is used in our places as a mixer for alcoholic beverages. It is used as a cold beverage when it is hot. It is used differently. And therefore, that is the market that we're trying to get into. We have tasked KTDA, and we told them to come with new research and put a lot of money into research. The country has also created what we call the Tea Research Foundation, which is now putting so much effort and so much time and so much money into research to find out the new ways of consumption of teas and find out the new generation. What do they want? What does Generation X want? How do we get into their table that Generation X is seated? When you have people sitting at a place in Uptown, where only people below 25 years or below 30 years are sitting, how do we get our tea to that table? How do we get into that pocket?
Wouldn't that be quite a tall order, Mheshimiwa?
It is not a tall order. The people who are now getting to that pocket, be it, I keep giving an example that one day a friend of mine told that they used to work for a beverage company. And when mobile telephony came into this country, one of their bosses told them, now you know we have very serious competition. And they wondered whether there was a new alcoholic beverage manufacturer that has come into the country. They said, no. We have a telco that has gotten into the industry. And what it's going to mean is that when they get the pocket of George Maringa, before he gets to the bar where we sell him alcoholic beverages in the evening, he will have spent most of his money on airtime. So it is not difficult. Over the last 20 years when our mobile telephony was introduced into this country, a lot of things have changed. The way you spend your money. In 1997, when you had 500 shillings in your pocket, you did not buy airtime. Airtime was not a necessity. Right now, today, at this time and age, when you have 500 shillings, 100 shillings first goes to airtime. Before you even talk, before you even discuss, before you leave your house, you have bought airtime. So we have a lot of things that are going to change. And one of the ways that we must keep, you see, we must keep abreast with the markets. And what we're saying as KTDA and as tea sector in this country is that we must keep abreast with the markets and get to know what the trends are. We are now seeing different trends everywhere, even in mobile, in the vehicle industry, in the automobile industry. Now we are moving more towards electric vehicles. And it's going to be, that's the future. You know, when M-Pesa came and people were resistant, it is a future. It has now come and consumed our entire economy. So we must keep abreast with the trends. So it is not a tall order. We are going to make it as long as we are all together and we have agreed with the people that this is a new way to go. So we are fighting to get into the table. When people go to Uptown, those things you call a aluta, we as a tea industry are getting into the aluta table. When you're going to do aluta, we shall be there.
I'd have you know
in very intelligent ways.
I'd have you know that tea is actually my favorite beverage.
All right, you see.
So that's
so
why I'm a bit passionate.
I'm preaching to the choir.
Yes, you're preaching to the choir on matters tea. Perhaps you'll even diversify to purple tea.
Yes.
And other forms of tea. And of course, as we see how it happens even in other countries.
Actually,
like
just so you know, KTT has really moved into what we call orthodox tea.
Okay.
We're now selling more orthodox tea than any other person in the world. That's where we're headed. I think now we have a huge percentage of our factories producing orthodox tea. In fact, we are looking at a way that some of the factories are going to purely produce orthodox tea because we are getting some very good markets. And you see, those are the intelligent ways of selling tea locally and abroad.
Okay. Yep. Mheshimiwa, looking at the issue that seems to be plaguing this, before we go to the entry, to this issue of the radical changes.
Yes.
You spoke about the benefits that came about with them. How much of fighting cartels have we been able to do?
Oh, it's been crazy. I think I am one of the most highly guarded members of parliament because when I came into parliament 2 months into my time in parliament, the previous regime tried to overturn the gains that we had made as a tea industry.
Okay.
And I went to KTDA buildings and I actually kicked those people out. And you know, the cartels are not just what you think. They are very powerful people. They have roots. They're like snakes with 9 heads. And every time you turn, you find there's someone supporting them. There's someone supporting them on the other side. They have infiltrated. They had infiltrated even the government. But thanks to President William Ruto and Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, we have been able to nip the cartels in the bud. The cartels used to be in tea sales, in brokerage, in fertilizer sales, in tea bags. They were everywhere, in every sphere that you may think about. But now we've been able to contain them. And that's why you see we were able, the entire industry was paid better than had been paid in the last 5 years. In fact, the worst paying factory in the last year was better than any factory had paid in the last 5 years.
What was the bonus?
The best paying bonus was 57 shillings. And what we had seen previously, like where I come from, Theta and Darugo, we had paid as low as 22 shillings previously. Until the new reforms came and were able to give better pay. And you know, some of these things that we did were not even magic. It was not even rocket science. It was just about managing the cost of production, managing labor, managing diesel consumption, managing biomass consumption, managing, you know, the times and how we use electricity, how we weather tea, how we get the tea to the market, managing just issues of management, of corporate management, was able to save us, to some factories, as much as 22% of the cost of production. We got some factories that were KTDA managed, spending as much as 79 shillings, some of them as much as 100 shillings to produce 1 kilo of tea, while the private companies were able to produce tea at 55 shillings. So we have brought our companies way down to that level of 60 shillings, 62 shillings, and we're still looking to gain more, especially with the solarization of our tea factories, where we stop using biofuel, biomass fuel, and now we start using more green energy that is less expensive.
Mheshimiwa, we are due for a short commercial break. Switching gears now to the entry that you have. We did hear what, I'm sure you heard what Mheshimiwa Kalonzo Musyoka, the Wiper Party leader, spoke about yesterday. He said that parliamentarians need to stop, in his words, wasitekwe nyara, by whomsoever he was referring to. As a legislator, even before we go to the break, do you think that that is a legitimate concern? Is there that notion going on between you and your colleagues as well?
I don't think Mheshimiwa Kalonzo Musyoka has any locus standi to discuss members of parliament. He's not a member of parliament. When he got a chance to take people to anything close to parliament, which was the Iyala, he took his son. I don't think he has any locus standi to lecture members of parliament or his party or any other people on anything about legislation. I would opt that I do not respond to Mheshimiwa Kalonzo Musyoka's sentiments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mheshimiwa Gigi Kagombe is here in studio. We are due for a short commercial break. When we come back, we look at now what is in there in tray, looking at the affordable housing, the amendment of the Affordable Housing Bill 2023, as well as other issues, as well as, you know, the Social Health Insurance Fund. What else the Kenya Kwanza government intends to have as its legislative agenda this year in 2024. The parliament resumes tomorrow after a long recess. We are coming back in a short while. To stay with us.
Wanasema wasemao kuwa elimu ni bahari haiishi kwa kuchotwa. Wakati mwingi natangamana na wanafunzi madarasani, sio kama mwalimu bali kama nahodha kwenye kipindi cha tasnia ya elimu. Na iwapo utanikosa madarasani, basi utanipata nyanjani nikisaka habari zenye usawa, ufasaha na ukweli. Na iwapo utanikosa nyanjani, bila shaka utanipata studioni hapa nikisoma habari na kuendesha mijadala mikomavu. Mimi ni Andrin Kilemi, mpenzi wa lugha ya Kiswahili na elimu kwa jumla.
They say money makes the world go round. So let's slow things down a bit. Put things in perspective. From the markets to the streets to the stocks, we make the complex comprehensible. Join me, Hibak Said, on TV47 Business News for market insights like never before.
The news that matters the most is the one that hits close to home. When disasters strike, we are there to inform you. When the bullets are flying, we tell you who's shooting and why. Reporting on your victories, your health, your money, your security, your past, present, and future. We are interested in telling the stories of creativity, hard work, and resilience that you are known for.
That is our job. This is my job. My name is Victor Moyakane, and it's my honor to bring you this news this way every Thursday night on the home of Untold Stories.
Katika majengo haya, hapa ndipo sheria zinapotungwa na zinapopakuliwa. Nitakuletea viongozi mbalimbali, mirengo mbalimbali, wote kwa pamoja wakipika na kupakua. Tutawapa nafasi kuweza kuangazia changamoto na mafanikio ya ugatuzi katika ukumbi wa siasa kila siku ya Jumanne kuanzia saa 1 kamili na kuendelea.
Toka eneo hili la Naivasha kwenye kaunti 032, gatuzi la Nakuru.
Toka kaunti ya Elgeyo Marakwet, kaunti 028.
Nikiripotia runinga ya TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Wajir.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Turkana.
Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching The Daily Report, still here in studio with Mheshimiwa Gigi Kagombe. During the break, of course, we were looking at the issues that are emerging. Remember, Parliament resumes from long recess tomorrow. Gigi Kagombe, we are here to discuss. Of course, we've looked at the tea conversation, the tea reforms. Time now for what is on the in tray, and among them is the amendment of the Affordable Housing 2023. Mheshimiwa, you've had the concerns, and I'm sure you even see in that viral video that was a bit viral about 2 weeks ago about Nani Ana Nyumba. Do you think that, and it's a question that has been there for a while, Kenyans have asked, was it a matter of urgency that this bill was enacted in the first year of the Kenya Kwanza government, if you're being honest?
First of all, well, this is your show.
Yes.
And therefore, we will go with what you decide. But I'll tell you, we have more important and more pressing issues that are on our entry. First among them, this is where you probably bring Mheshimiwa Kalonzo Musyoka.
Yes.
We have National Dialogue Committee report that has been put, and you remember before that committee was put in place, you remember what a mess our country had ran into. That is something very important that we must discuss. And it is important for me to tell you that this is the busiest of our sessions in Parliament. This is the time when we receive the budget policy statement. This is the time, this is the session where we're going to be discussing about county allocation and county additional county revenue allocation between the Senate and the National Assembly. This is the time when we receive the budget estimates. This is a session where we come to discuss, where we are going to do public participation for our budget. This is a very busy schedule for National Assembly at the moment, because everything now is geared towards the Finance Act and Finance Bill, and ultimately the Finance Act of 2024. You know, so we have a lot of other things that we are going to discuss. You know, housing levy has been vilified, and I dare say, by the people outside Parliament. The housing bill and everything about housing has been vilified by people who actually live in their own houses. I want you to know that we have 61% of Kenyans who live in their own houses, meaning that we have 39% of people who do not have houses, who should actually have their own houses. And this is putting everyone, including people who live in manyatas, in very far-flung areas. So when we talk of people who have access to improved sanitation, it moved from 61 to 21. So we cannot discuss or ever overemphasize the importance of housing. It is something that we need. And remember, even people who are now living in those houses with access to improved sanitation are people living in other people's houses. When we sit in this room with everybody who is here, you will find that we are all living in rented houses. We do not have our own houses. We are not house owners. We, the people who live in Nairobi, only about 2% own the houses. The rest of the people live in rented houses. So we cannot start discussing whether we need housing for people or not. That is something that is a must. And you remember, if you want to know that housing is important, both sides of the divide in the previous elections had housing agenda in their manifesto. The only thing that differed was the rate at which we were to levy or to ask people to contribute to the housing. And you know, Kenya Kwanza government went to what the opposition, who are now fighting and vilifying the housing project, had proposed at 1.5. We came from 2% to now the 1.5 that the opposition had proposed, and we agreed with them. So I want to say this. Housing has been vilified, but housing is very important. And you know, when we put the houses on sale in Nakuru, they were gone in a record 14 days. All of them. Rural housing project is about to get finished, maybe in the next 4 months. When it is put on sale, it will be gone in a week's time. Pangani, Park Road, those are housing projects that did not even last a month. Thousands of housing projects. It goes to tell you that we have a serious housing need in this country. So we cannot discuss the need for the housing. Now, we could discuss many other things about the modalities of how the houses are going to be bought, and who is going to get access, who's going to benefit, who's going to pay, who's going to reap the benefits, who's going to get their money after 7 years, and all those things. But we cannot sit here and pretend that housing is not a need in this country.
So the modalities that the judiciary, the courts have faulted, seems to be what the National Assembly, especially the public participation, was sort of playing catch up with during this period that you've seen the public participation going on. Do you think then that it will solve the issues? Because in that Nakuru, we did see a Kenyan who complained that when they went and booked through the website or, you know, the portal, they have not yet been allocated their house. They're yet to see. Do you think that indeed, as it looks good on paper, it will be good on the ground?
What happened with that Kenyan is that, like many of us, they wanted a house and they were out. The houses were out before everybody could get. A lot of people wanted houses in Nakuru. That is what is called, they were sold out. So what that means for that Kenyan who was complaining is that we need more houses so that now she can get, or he can get, a chance to buy a house.
Yes.
I have had a lot of people talking about, oh, where do you expect the hustlers to get 4.5 million? I'm a hustler myself. You're a hustler. You know, it doesn't mean that hustlers do not earn. Hustlers earn. Whether you're on a boda, whether you're a mamamboga, they earn. And we have affordable housing and social housing. Social housing, a lot of social houses are below $1 million bob. And you have all the time that the banks will give you, including up until 18 years to repay, meaning that you could pay as low as 3,000 shillings. 3,000 shillings a month translates to 100 bob a day. That is social housing. But this is information that people don't want to listen, because we say give a dog a bad name, and when you kill it, the neighbors will be happy. The villagers are going to be very happy that the dog is dead. But when you ask the people who have actually benefited from the housing project, they know what it means. And that is why you find, even as people make noise on Twitter, and by the way, the people who are fighting these housing projects, that ni watu ya Twitter na fish fingers. But the actual people who need those houses, a teacher who's been serving for 35 years and has not been able to secure themselves a house, cannot fight such a project. They know that this government is thinking about them. In fact, they are wishing that these houses could be more, the housing project could be extrapolated to include them, so that we do not have that kind of person who's complaining that they applied and they did not get it.
Okay.
But I also agree, and this government is open to ideas, to correction, because nobody has the monopoly of ideas. Nobody has the monopoly of intelligence. We are saying that we are okay to be corrected and told this, the system here needs to be corrected a bit, so that we are able to get more people and be fairer to people, get it a more fair system of getting access for these housing projects. And when we do that, and if we get constructive criticism from the opposition, we are willing to take it. We are willing to get a paper that is saying that, please, do not give these houses this way. In fact, do not charge this level of interest. Please charge this, because it is workable, and the banks are going to be able to provide this. And then, you know, such is positive criticism. But don't take a mic and say, nyumba hakuna. We are saying houses. You are saying now what you just said is evidence that there's actually housing project going on, because you're saying that there's even someone who said they applied for house and they could not get because other people got and they were left out. So what do you think that person is thinking when he hears you fighting the housing projects, and he applied and wanted a house in Nakuru?
Well, I'm not fighting it personally. I'm just airing the concerns.
It is a concern. Now, I'm not now talking of you as George Maringa, but I'm talking about people who actually want houses, and now they can't find them because they are not enough. They have been sold out. Actually, do you know how long people who are doing houses outside the government housing projects, do you know how long it takes for people to sell out their houses? It takes an average of 24 months after the houses are complete. It took an average of 14 days for the government housing project to be sold out. What does that tell you? It tells you that we're making noise over here, but where the rubber meets the road, people actually need those houses. And that's why they're getting sold off. You know, a rational consumer will not go and buy what does not make sense. They will only buy what makes sense. It tells you that it's something, if a housing project with 2,000 houses gets done in 14 days, it tells you that these are rational consumers with purchasing power who have gone and done what is rational to do. And these houses have followed the supply, the market demands. So the law of demand and supply.
Okay. With the two House committees having concluded public participation, will the views that were expressed by Kenyans during that time of the public participation, will Kenyans be confident that they will be included in the amendment?
I want you to know that the people who are in that committee are members of parliament.
Yes.
These are members who are elected by the only true voice of Kenyans, which is a general election, where they elect the people that they trust are going to represent them. You know, I don't know why we think that we have better ways of judging true representation other than the people themselves. The people of Kenya woke up on the 8th of August and spoke loudly. And they chose the people, and they had the option to choose anybody they could have chosen. But they elected the people that they thought are going to represent them best. Yes. So that committee has people's representative, has people who have come from the ground during the recess, who went and listened to the people and said, now, this is what Kenyans are saying. And that committee is composed of both the government and the opposition in equal measure. In fact, you know, the committees of 15 people have 7 and 8. The only difference is one person. So, and in committees, by the way, so I just tell you, when people sit in committees, we do not see each other as opposition and government. We see each other as members of a committee who've been called by Kenyans to serve their interest.
Okay.
So I am trusting that Kenyans are represented in a proper way by the people who sit in the housing committee, in the lands and housing committee, and their views are going to see the light of day.
Okay, brilliant. The other issue is, of course, the NADCO report that you mentioned, the adoption of that report. The first question was, I mean, I did see a question, I was trying to trace it on X. They asked, why wasn't that report adopted before proceeding on recess?
Oh, now, you know, Parliament is a house of order. You know, we do not just rush to things because someone wants us to do that. You know, we have a lot of things that we could have discussed in the previous parliament, but before the recess, including a very important component of this government, which is IEBC. We have many things that we have not discussed because...
We'll come to that.
Yeah, we shall come to it. But I'm saying there was no rush in discussing the NADCO report. And we needed to also go... You know, NADCO report was happening in Bomas, and there wasn't actual public participation. Now, we have been on recess. We have listened to the people on the ground. We have listened to our voters. And now when we come to discuss it in Parliament, we shall enrich it with what we have had people on the ground talking about. We shall enrich it with views of the people that we represent. So I think it is even advantageous that we did not discuss it then, and we had a whole 2 months to listen to the people, and now we're going to bring this debate enriched with the views of Mwananchi, with the views of Wanjiko, and therefore we're going to achieve even a better version of the NADCO report discussion on the floor of the Parliament.
Looking at the reconstitution of the IEBC, what is your immediate view as a legislator regarding how that process should be undertaken?
You know, IEBC stands at the very pivot of democracy of this country.
Yes.
We cannot be a democratic country without IEBC. This is the organization, this is the institution that brings sanity to all the shenanigans that we bring from this side and this other side. This is an umpire of both political divides. So therefore, it cannot be anything that people want to joke around with. And what Parliament saw and deemed important to do is to even enrich the panel that is going to be constituting the IEBC commissioners and the IEBC commission as a whole, to even include more people so that we have better representation, so that people like the Law Society of Kenya are represented, you know, the religious arm or the religious group which represents practically everybody in this country, because we all belong to one religious group or formation or the other, are represented. I think the more inclusive that process is, the better, because it forms the very central cog in the machine that is called democracy in our country. And I think this is an improvement by far of anything that has been in the past. It is an improvement of what was before the new constitution, and an improvement of what the new constitution has done, and an improvement of what we had seen in the last dispensation. So I think the way this thing has been formed, people may want to make noise here and there, but everybody knows that the more, the merrier. And now this, the way we have formed the selection panel is more inclusive than it has ever been. The only way we can do is make it even more inclusive. And we would want to hear people who are opposed to what we are doing even bring more ideas of how to make it more inclusive in terms of representation of all interest groups.
It's that at that point I want us to listen to Mheshimiwa Opiyo Wandayi, his remarks regarding the reconstitution of the IEBC. Let's listen in to the minority leader in the National Assembly.
The terms of reference of those of that committee were so clear. Now understand that some people are pushing for the reconstitution of the IEBC through an IEBC selection panel that is now, for all intents and purposes, moribund. And our point is this, in summary, really. Any attempt to reconstitute the IEBC outside the framework that has been established by NADCO will be totally resisted. And if they go ahead and reconstitute the IEBC outside the NADCO framework, then that will only be an IEBC for Kenya Kwanza. It will not be an IEBC for Kenya.
That even 450 billion shillings, which is less than 10% of a national budget, which is more than 3 trillion, they cannot be able to send that money. So even in education, when Ruto says that there's going to be money coming to the schools, that's a big lie. And one day you're right. I mean, a liar should have a good memory. If you want to be a good liar, you should have a good memory. Unfortunately, President Ruto does not have a good memory. He tells a lie today and he forgets that he lied yesterday and tells you another lie.
Mheshimiwa, your reaction to the concerns raised, especially about listening to the two leaders?
I choose not to respond to Honorable Orengo. He is a governor and he belongs to the Senate. Those are the people who deal with the local leaders, like Honorable Orengo. But what I would say regarding the sentiments by Honorable Opiyo Wandayi is that it's a shame. He's a shame to Parliament.
How?
He should even resign. Why? As a minority leader. Because by the mandate of the Constitution, the people with the responsibility of making laws for this country is Parliament. You cannot, as a sitting minority leader, person who forms the leadership of the House, remove and be part of the people who are usurping the powers of Parliament to make laws and donate them to NADCO. people who sit in Bomas who are not elected by anybody. They represent nobody. Kalonzo Musyoka is not a representative of the people. He has not been elected by anybody. The people who are elected by Wanjiku sit in the National Assembly. And that is the mandate that is given by the Constitution that we passed in 2010. And we said that this is an institution that forms the three arms of government that shall make decisions that regard to making and deciding about the laws of this country. When a person who sits in the leadership of parliament sits and says that they would want parliament ignored or NADCO listened to at the expense of parliament, an institution established by law, by the constitution of this country, people who are elected, including himself, by the people that he represents, to come to parliament and make laws. And you donate that power to people who formed themselves during Maandamano at a place in a hotel somewhere and said, okay, now these ones are the people now who are going to talk for us, on behalf of us, at a place. Do you know, by the way, Bomas is a place for circus? I don't know if you know that Bomas was made actually as a place for entertainment. It's not a place for law.
But it has its history.
It has its history, but his history is the Bomas of Kenya is a place for circus. So, when you remove making of law from parliament, and as a minority leader, stand to be listened to by the people of this country, donating the powers given to expressly by the Constitution to constitute the IEBC selection panel, that is expressly in the Constitution. That is the mandate of parliament. And the person who sits in the leadership of the House say that anything that comes from the House, that is now an anarchist. That is someone who supports anarchy. Because you should remember how NADCO was formed. It was formed out of coercion by anarchists. Who were arsonists on the road, who were creating and purporting and supporting lawlessness in this country. And we said as a government, we were magnanimous enough to say, okay, fine, we'll listen to you, and we want to sit somewhere and listen to you and listen to your concerns. And we did. Therefore, I want to say the sentiments of Opio Wandai are in the list appalling and should be ignored by Kenyans.
Okay, let's enter the home stretch of this conversation. We have a few minutes left. Looking at now the entry of Bunge, your colleagues in the Parliament, both especially National Assembly, do you think that you will then endeavor to deliver the promises that as UDA, as the majority party in Parliament, had promised, and is there hope for Kenyans?
You know, I want to answer that question this way.
Yes.
That Kenya Kwanza is so keen and intent of making lives better for Kenyans.
Okay.
We know, and I admit here, that life is actually hard for Kenyans. But tomorrow is more important than today. And we have a responsibility as Kenyans to create a better Kenya for our future generations and for ourselves in the immediate future. I will say that we have done most of the bit that's required to be done, and it's been painful for Kenyans. But I am certain that in the next few months, Kenyans will start now feeling the benefit of the hard-pressed measures that we took to safeguard the economy from collapse.
How many months? What's the timeline?
I would say by the time we're doing the next finance bill, which is June of this year, Kenyans will start having some respite, economically speaking.
Okay.
And I think Kenya as a country, Kenya is such a resilient country. It has been looted. It has been, it has Kenya has gone through a lot of mutilation by people who do not really care for anybody. And Kenya withstood, and Kenya was resilient. What I am now saying is that in the next few months, 4 or 5 months, we shall be on our road now up, because we have been consistently for the last about 5 years on a slump. But I think we hit the floor and we are now on our way up.
So in June, we'll call you, have another conversation.
I'll be here.
We will look at what you've said in June, that things will be better, and we'll hold you responsible.
I'll be responsible for my utterances.
Yes.
Yes, and those are my utterances, and really the utterances of the government of Kenya Kwanza.
Okay. And we shall look forward to having more discussions like this. Mheshimiwa Gigi Kagombe, the Member of Parliament for Gatundu South constituency, joining us on the Daily Report. We thank you for your feedback as well. My name is George Maringa. Thanking you so much for the entire crew that made this a success as always.